All right, so welcome back, everyone. Our special STEM talk for today is going to be done by Bryan Johnston, and he's a senior technologist in the Advanced Computer Engineering Lab at the CHPC. He leads the HPC Ecosystems project, which focuses on redistributing HPC infrastructure to institutions throughout Africa. Bryan also provides general HPC training and outreach initiatives for the CHPC, and he has his background is quite a vast background, but I'll just say he has an MSc in computer science from Georgia Tech. Thank you, Bryan. Over to you.
Thanks, Benjamin. Can you just confirm that you can still hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, cool. I'm hoping that you can see my pointer. So thanks, everyone. I'm of the understanding that I have a 30-minute slot, but I'm not going to use 30 minutes through the full 30 minutes. I'll leave some space for discussion afterwards. Is that about right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so hi, everyone. As Benjamin said, I'll be speaking about the HPC Ecosystems project. Chances are some of you have heard of this project already, but for those that haven't, I hope that you enjoy the ride. So first, a little bit about me, just to give some more depth. I started off as an HPC system recipient and an HPC system administrator back when I was working at UKZN. I worked inside the Maths, Data, and Computer Science department, and prior to that, I was technical support for the Faculty of Science before UKZN lost their faculties. I worked there through to 2016, and during that time, we actually received some hardware from the CHPC. It was a small Ranger system, which I'll speak a bit more about later, but we received it primarily for system administration training, to train some student class competition kiddies. And through that process, I was given the opportunity to travel to the United States and attend the supercomputing conference in the US, which is the largest supercomputing conference of its kind in the world, where you have more than 12,000 delegates crammed together for a week. I also was the unofficial system administrator support for Hippo, which is, I think it's still the system at UKZN. It's a 1,000 node system there. And yeah, at about 2016, I was then moved over to CHPC, where I went from the recipient to leading the project that does all these site deployments. And since 2016, I've led this project. And during that time, I've also become more of an active HPC user. Primarily when I was completing my master's degree in Georgia Tech, I had to have access to an HPC system for my computing systems studies and computational science. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm Bryan with a Y. I already have 2 I's. The good Lord didn't need me to have a 3rd. So I start off by saying I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I am the master of memes. You're going to see a lot of them in this slideshow. I'll say hashtag humble brag. I'm the reigning Science Slam champion, so I'm allowed to use memes if I want. But I also hope that you enjoy the memes. So briefly, this project, HPC Ecosystems, started off as the Ranger project. Over time, it evolved into the HPC Ecosystems project. So I'll speak briefly about the origin of this project. When it started, I actually can't see my full slides because the Zoom overlay is over it, but I think that's saying 2014. The Ranger project started in 2014. Very briefly, our director of the CHPC at the time, Dr. Happy Sitole, spoke to the United States. There was a Texas Advanced Computing Center there that was decommissioning what was at the time the 20th fastest supercomputer in the world. Traditionally in the US, they mothball these systems, and that seems very wasteful for us because if it's still the 20th fastest system in the world, surely it has some use for Africa. So Happy and the director, Dan Stanzioni in TAC, agreed that they would ask for forgiveness rather than permission, shoved about 20 racks onto a ship and sent it through to Cape Town. And here's the unboxing of the system here. The motivation was that it would provide resources to local institutions in South Africa, so it could be used for human capital development, student cluster competition training, and also support the square kilometer array, which back then was still in its early stages, but we needed to have computational expertise to manage the predictable exascale level computation that the broader square kilometer array would be requiring. So these were the 5 pilot sites that received Ranger equipment through this project. I represented UKZN there. It was free, but also I had a lot of interest in this stuff, and the researchers that I supported would also see some value in it. So just as an example of where this program started, the Ranger equipment was the 7th fastest supercomputer in the world when it was launched. It was the fastest open science system in the world. And by the time they did shut it down, it reached number 50 in the world. Primarily, the reason they shut it down was the power consumption. It was 2 megawatts of power. And, you know, with computers, you can basically retire a system after 2 or 3 years and get the same performance, but much more efficient. And that's what they were doing. So we had a whole bunch of motivations behind why the CHPC wanted to adopt this. It was because we were already running a similar architecture at the CHPC. We were able to provide long production systems to student cluster competition kids so that they could prepare their competition algorithms and practice. There was also an opportunity to take this decommissioned hardware, which was just going to go to waste, be mothballed in a warehouse somewhere. We wanted to repurpose them to distribute them for mid-tier systems throughout Africa. And of course, you could develop and prototype cluster management tools and techniques through these systems because now you have a test bed that you don't have to be afraid of breaking. Yeah, so just very briefly, the plan was to give it to local sites like universities or research groups to give them local processing capacity. They could then scale up to the CHPC if they need that computation. And the idea was that it would prepare people to be more efficient in their consumption of the national resource. There was a lot of institutional support for this and a lot of interest from centers around the world to support this initiative. I mean, forgive me for sounding a bit cynical, but it's almost like a perfect excuse for e-dumping without the guilt. And it would be e-dumping if we weren't putting these to use. But thankfully, as we've evolved to version 2, which we've called Ecosystems Project, because we can't really call it Ranger anymore, because we now have equipment from Cambridge, we have our own decommissioned HPC system, the C6100, and we have Stampede. It's now become the Ecosystems Project, because we're alluding to the fact that there's an ecosystem of supercomputing resources from the base level, which is your workstation system, scaling up towards the national facility. Somewhere in between, these will fit in that ecosystem, if you can picture a pyramid. Whoops, there's a meme that you have to see. So yeah, I've said a lot. Those are just words, and they are meaningless. Let's talk about the actual sort of hardware that sites are receiving. Right now, our most recent system that we've deployed is the Stampede system. I won't go through all the details here, but you can see it's a pretty decent system. What's nice about it is modular, it's customizable. It's Dell commodity hardware, so we can restructure it and make smaller systems out of this if we want. Just a caveat with the accelerators, there are Xeon Phis, and those have been deprecated and decommissioned a long time ago. So they are still in the system, so don't get excited. But if you think there's a use for them, by all means, if you want to revive the Dodo, you're welcome to do that. Of course, a lot of you are thinking, you'd like to get involved in this. Some of your sites and institutions already have equipment, whether you know it or not. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to kind of just promote that we exist. But also, you don't have to feel embarrassed or ashamed to be a freeloader, because there's a big party. If you look on that map, that's a pretty accurate representation of site deployments throughout Africa at the moment. The legend there is for the different types of architecture. Stampede, we've been able to distribute more widely because, like I said, it is customizable. So we can make smaller units if we want, custom fit to the site. Ranger was a monolithic standard chassis. You could not break it down into smaller systems. So, for example, one site received 1, but they're using less than 1/4 of it because they don't have the capacity to run the power that it requires. This is a big project, so we have a big team. The CHPC is only one component of that big team, but from our side, pretty much the entire Advanced Computer Engineering Lab is involved in this project. We also have the technical consulting experts from the research side. Primarily these chaps over here, Charles, Mteto, and Samuel, have been instrumental in providing support for the users. You know, their special requirements. We have the tech team that helps with the project as well. They perform pretty much the same role as the ACE lab, except they're just in a separate group. So we keep them delineated on this little layout here. And then we've got a lot of operations support as well, because this is a complex project. So how does Ecosystems Project actually work? A traditional approach would be that we get the hardware ready. This is a smaller version. This is a customized version that's been designed for a specific site specifications. It's not a full rack. We then do an on-site assessment to verify what they say is true. Believe it or not, some sites actually aren't aware of what they have. We've come to a site, and I'm not mentioning Mozambique because I love them. They actually had a circuit breaker that couldn't support the rack, and it kept tripping, and they thought it was attributed to what is equivalently load shedding, but it was actually a circuit breaker, and it would take 2 hours round trip to go to the site to flip a switch. So site assessment helps us to get a better idea of what's actually going on, if there's a disconnect between what they think is going on and the reality. Then once that's done and the site is ready, we confirm it's ready, we'll do a site deployment. And then after that, we do the site training. So we're kind of going back to pre-COVID, where everything was done on site for the training. But luckily, just before COVID became a requirement for us to be locked down, we had just started moving our training online. That was about March, April 2020, I started the material. And that was largely influenced by my experience doing the largest online master's program in the world, Georgia Tech, very successful model. So we had incorporated a lot from there into our deployment. So we've put that all online. We host open HPC virtual labs, which is a software stack to run a cluster. And then we do other HPC sysadmin workshops, which I'll talk about a bit later. I won't go into the details here, but basically it's an ongoing and evolving experience. It's online education. You can all attest to that. Benjamin and his team have done really great work with the summer school. I think we're always refining. You know, from my side, I studied this formally through Georgia Tech, both as a student, but also did some educational technology modules. So I've done the literature behind it as well. And there's a lot of factors at play, and we're always trying to adjust it to Africa, because it's not actually that easy to implement these best practices in Africa. So just argument's sake, we need to be able to have access to content that is bandwidth accommodating for South Africa and Africa. Yeah, you probably at this point are wondering how you can put your hand up to get involved, or you might be feeling a bit stressed about how you can get involved, but you don't have to worry. It's very easy to get connected into our community to start. You can join our Google group, which is more like a mailing list where we send out alerts and notices about all the events that we're going to be running. We have much more interactive Slack, and we also offer inter-site collaborations. If you have an institute that wants to collaborate on a particular project or use a resource that another site has, by all means, you get on one of those groups, the Google group or the Slack, and you just raise your hand. We have sites working together already that are collaborating both inside South Africa amongst the institutions and also globally, Europe, United States, and other parts of Africa. And you're also welcome to just put your hand up to work with us, the actual team that's developing all the solutions that we're rolling out for the community. You might also, if you're interested, need to know a few factors for success, in the sense that get your hand up amongst a crowd of 50. How do you get selected? I won't go into the details here because I'd like to try to leave more time for discussion if there is. But we look at three major components: the infrastructure on site, which would be your power, your cooling, your network. We also look at your users. That's probably the most critical after the infrastructure is ready, is having users. Because if we can deploy a black box system to the site, users can start running with it immediately. The tech support is more of an ongoing learning experience. We try to help the tech support as they are hands-on with the system and some users. We historically try to let the tech support gain expertise first, but that actually delays the implementation of the systems. And obviously, the big issue is leadership. People don't understand what these systems require and what value they can offer. So we really need to buy in to the university management so that they can understand how important these resources are. I will skip this. I'm sure Benjamin will share the slides later. This is just going into a little more of the nuances behind what you would need to consider to become eligible and ready in our eyes to be able to receive equipment now. We've learned quite a few lessons through this process. Just very briefly, people train up from these systems and they depart. This is not really applicable to a lot of the users that are listening in, but for system administrators particularly, we run all these engagements like you're having out the summer and winter school. These are to help you to optimize the use of the HPC systems. So there's a lot of stuff out there that we're providing. Benjamin is doing this, then there's the winter school coming up as well. Then you've got the sysadmin workshops that we run. It really helps to have a team that works together at your institution and to nominate a champion, someone that has genuine interest and perhaps even an investment in their career through the HPC being there. They can join the Slack and community groups and actually be the liaison for the site. And probably the biggest challenge is to resist the temptation to put your hand up immediately because something is free. I have to say, the one thing I've learned from this project is that if something is free, you'll have 10 people wanting it. And we've had a situation where a site has got let's say more than 10 racks of something. This happened before I joined, and they still to this day are not using them. And that's like almost 10 years ago. So there's no need to rush. There's always new systems coming into the pipeline. I adopt these two models here for the team. It's RS3, which is ready the site, ready the system, then worry about the system administrators, because then we can get the system on site and users can run immediately. And then the back to black box idea, where we're actually focusing on productivity now, not on knowledge, in the sense that prior we used to try to train up the system administrators to understand the systems before we made them public. But we've learned that unfortunately, not all the system administrators have the core competencies when they start that they need. And that takes a lot longer than we expected. So the systems sit there doing nothing. So now we're going to release the black box systems ready to run plug in and play HPC system immediately. Just a recap of the sort of activities we get up to. This is for just 2022. We ran quarterly online system administration training workshops. I took some members of the community to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, where they had introductory training to Linux clusters through the Linux Clusters Institute, which is a formal body in the United States that does this sort of training as well. And then we ran a co-hosted workshop at SC22 in Dallas. There were 15,000 attendees at SC22. We ran a small co-located workshop for about 30 people just prior to SC. Then everyone also attended SC. And all of these things I'm describing here generally cost very little for the partner community members to join. They normally just have to front up a flight, but the accommodation, the registration, everything is covered. And I can say for SC, it's about $1,500, close to 30,000 Rand just to get in. That's before you factor in your cost of flying and your cost of the hotel. So to have everything covered except your ticket, flying is normally a big opportunity. So what are we planning for this year? We are going to be running our quarterly online system administration training workshops as we do before. It's very similar model to what Benjamin is incorporating with Canvas. We do it through a similar virtual classroom software that was used at Georgia Tech as well. It's all standalone, run at your own pace. Everything is encapsulated on a fully offline, if you want, virtual lab where you can build your virtual cluster. You also have access to all the YouTube training material if you prefer to follow YouTube videos instead of following the guide. And the forum is really just there for people to put up questions, and we just post milestones. It's normally a 2-week program, and you run at your own pace because we want to accommodate everyone's personal experiences. You know, everyone has their own things going on after hours. So as long as you commit to maybe 2 hours a day, or let's say 5 hours every 3 days, you should be able to complete the course within a week. Something new that we're starting is the Special Interest Group in High Performance Computing Education chapter seminars, which I'm, I guess, pioneering with Europe. We're starting it's going to be one every 4 months between the different regions in the world. And we're leading the first one where we're going to have online seminars about HPC and education. That's an official ACM chapter, so it is recognized there. We are also starting the collaboration for SC23, which is hosted at Denver this year. And we are going to be getting funding again, hopefully from Google and the United States National Science Foundation. And then there'll be some more details released on our Slack and our Google group. And there are some other top secret things that I can't really reveal right now. So when those are completed, we will be able to release more information about those, but they're absolutely top secret. Can't say anything about them until we actually get the work done. I can mention, a lot of you are probably familiar with Lara. She's on one of the Slack workspace, and also I think she's providing recaps. She's involved in one of these projects. She's leading it, and it will be a world first when it is launched. So I'm very excited about that, and it should be done fairly soon once I just do my part. Very quickly want to acknowledge that this project is huge, and it requires a lot of input from a lot of different people. I've got our primary team, our community partners, the Texas Advanced Computing Center that's actually sent us 2 of their decommissioned tier 1 facilities. I mean, we're talking top 20 supercomputer systems that are worth, in one case, it was $60 million. You know, that's a hefty amount of change, and they're giving those systems to CHPC to distribute. STEMTech is our nonprofit partner who does a lot of the funding for us to travel to the United States and helps to coordinate all our workshops over there. We've got the European collaboration with Edinburgh, the EPCC, and also PRACE, which is the European Consortium for HPC. The Open HPC group is very supportive of what we're trying to do as well, because we use their software stack. And of course, University of Cambridge has given us hardware in the past. Just to sort of trail off, I mean, this is important, and I don't think it's actually been made that public, but we as a project community, and it's all about the community, because we couldn't have won this award without the community, because it was about inclusivity and diversity leadership. But the project received the HPC Wire Editor's Choice Award last year, and they actually had the words "changing the face of HPC," and so that's a really exciting achievement. You know, this community is vibrant, it's active, it's making things happen, and the world is recognizing that Africa exists and that we have HPC resources and we have the competence, and people are getting excited. So even if you don't think you can run a system, you can get involved with this project. You'll have connections to bigger and better overseas, and it really is. It's a fantastic. It's like, I love this job, and I really invite anyone that's interested to just drop us a line. My contact details are frozen. Well, there you go. My computer has frozen, so I guess we just have to wait. I heard that. Well, I don't know if anyone can hear me, but RSA Web has a ransomware attack going on at the moment. So maybe my RSA Web has now just decided to be hijacked. I don't know if you can still hear me. I see a thumbs up. Okay, well, in a moment, my slides are going to pop up with my contact details. So I'm happy to stop at that point until my computer decides to restore itself. If there are any questions or comments, once my internet is back, I will be able to be more interactive with my slides. I think it's just 2 more slides, one to show the contact information, and then I think another one's just another meme, which is very important.
Thank you very much, Bryan. It was really a very nice overview, and I'm sure you will get many new buyers just now of your systems. So thank you very much for that. Are there any questions? I forgot to. See if I can quickly go to the Slack channel. Okay, there is nothing in the Slack channel. I just checked. Unless Benjamin, have you picked up something in some questions in the Slack channel that I missed? But there are still only, sorry, here there are 20 new.
Yeah, so this is a question just about the mailing list, Bryan.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure we can make it available on the Slack channel.
Sure, I will drop a link to join. It's a Google group, so there's a form we ask everyone to fill out just so we get demographics for reporting. And then, yeah, I'll drop that through the Slack.
And also, can you list all the HPC clusters in South Africa currently at the universities?
The ones that are from HPC Ecosystems Hardware?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, there's WITS, there's University of Port Hare, UKZN, University of Zululand we're deploying this week. University of Mpumalanga will be done this quarter. There is Stellenbosch, UCT had a system, but I think our contact there has vanished. Northwest University has a system. We're deploying it, I think, Maikeng campus. Then Sefako Makato is receiving a system this year if their data center is ready. I don't know if anyone else is on the call that can help me just remember some of the other sites I might have dropped, but there's quite a few. Oh, nope, I've lost it.
Okay. And when should students, transition to using a CHPC cluster?
Can you repeat that?
When should students or researchers transition to using a CHPC cluster?
I guess that is kind of an open-ended question. It's more when they feel comfortable. Ideally, the ecosystems hardware is there to help people to get comfortable with efficiencies and deploying jobs on the main system. That is kind of, I guess, more of an issue of personal integrity, in the sense that, do you want to experiment how to be efficient on an expensive big system, versus refining your code on a local system. But typically, if you're comfortable with your code and you need more resources, scale up to CHPC. One hidden advantage with the local systems is that they are pretty available for local institutions because they have a much smaller pool of people they're competing with. So I guess it depends on the scale of the job.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. I think that's all the questions we have for today. Thanks so much for your talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.